Our Community Board, Thursday, 2nd of September. I'm Belinda Ward, your chairperson for this morning, and we have some members online there who may wish to introduce themselves, starting with our Deputy Chair, Frank. Morning, Frank. You're muted.
My apologies. Frank Owen, Deputy Chair, representing the Kerikeri subdivision.
Manuela.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Manuela, and I'm representing over Opua and Russell. And the way our internet works is like a party line. The more people come on, the less connection we have. So I might drop out my video later on.
Do we have Manawai there?
Kia ora. I totally agree with Manuela. Our connectivity in the Moerewa Kawakawa area is not fantastic. But here I am. I'm Manuai. I'm part of our Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board representing the Moerewa Kawakawa area. I'm turning my camera off, Whānau.
Thank you. Lane.
Hi, my name's Lane Eyre. Good morning, everybody. I represent the Kerikeri subdivision.
We have Councillor Smith.
Morena koutou ko Rachel Smith tōku ingoa. I am a councillor with the Whānau District Council and chair the Strategy and Policy Committee.
And we also have Councillor Clendon joining us, who has speaking rights on our committee.
Yeah, kia ora koutou, David. I'm a councillor for Bay of Islands-Whangaroa. Kia ora.
Thank you. And we have our CEO, Sean Clark.
Kia ora, Sean Clark of CEO Whānau District Council. Good to be with you all.
I think we have Casey.
Morena, everybody. Casey Gannon, Meetings Administrator for Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board.
And we may have some other staff sitting there if you would like to introduce yourselves, please.
Morena, everybody. My name is Catherine True and I'm the Funding Advisor for Far North District Council.
Morning, Catherine.
Morning all, I'm Helen Ronaldson. I'm sitting in as the rep from Infrastructure and Asset Management today.
Welcome. Right, that's all of us. Then we will start the meeting with a karakia. I will read the prayer for you this morning, that we ask that through the board's discussions and decisions, the representatives elected may advocate on behalf of the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa community with aroha, imagination, skill and wisdom to achieve a fairer and more united community that enhances the well-being of the community and solves the community's problems efficiently and effectively. Now I'd like to move into apologies. I have apologies from member Dave Hukwe-Kopa, he is unwell, and also apologies from member Bruce Mills, he does not have connectivity. And as I mentioned earlier, David Clendon, councillor, will sit on our board with speaking rights today. Do I have a seconder for that, please?
Lane.
Thank you, Lane. Now we are voting by division, so please speak up. Manuela?
All good, thank you.
Frank?
All good.
Manuai?
Aye.
And Rachel?
Abstain, Madam Chair.
You're going to abstain throughout the voting of the meeting, correct?
At the request of the board, yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, now we're going to our public forum session. We have some speakers waiting in the lobby, I think, Casey. Do we have, I've got first up Lorraine Bentley, to speak to us on the Power Road petition, which is actually item 7.2, page 25 on our agenda. Is Lorraine with us?
I haven't seen them log on. Sorry, Madam Chair. So if we move on to Camilla and John, speaking on behalf of Williams Trust Group, and if they do arrive, we can.
Excellent. Camilla and John, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. And this is on the funding application. Is it for the Williams? Got it here somewhere.
Yes, it is. Williams Trust Group, Madam Chair.
Yes, yeah. It's a very long name. Technically the Henry and William Williams Memorial Museum Trust, but in this case, that's really just the umbrella organisation that's putting in the application, really on behalf of a group of people that are part of the organising committee for the Paihia Bicentennial.
Sure,
So,
excellent.
John,
so this is to take place for 6 months from December 2022 to May 2023 at the Waitangi Museum, who have kindly donated their upper area. Is that correct for your?
That's all correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have an application in today for the facilitator in order to produce some concept documents for the exhibition. So thank you. You're welcome to speak to it now.
Thank you. Do you want to talk to that a bit, John?
Well, no, you lead off.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that the main things to say that since the application's gone and, you know, nothing essentially has changed. What we're looking for here is essentially seed funding to put together a proper proposal about how this might work. Everybody that we sort of talk to on the ground all says, oh, that's an excellent idea, but it's a case of actually being able to put it together in a proper proposal and develop it into fruition. I mean, the Waitangi, the original idea came from Dame Claudia Orange, and then when we spoke to the Waitangi Museum people, they were like, absolutely, brilliant idea. You know, it's an opportunity for a lot of the people in Paihia and the Bay of Islands, as well as visitors, to get a much bigger understanding of what the difference over 200 years has looked like, you know, what originally Paihia was like. And we've had some good chats with the Waitangi Marae people, and with we've spoken also with the Williams House Museum people who have a lot of that knowledge already in terms of sort of content and things, compared to how Paihia is now. And, you know, so there'll be a section where you skip forward, you know, as a part of that celebration over that whole 6 months. I mean, obviously, this is, you know, a chicken and egg situation where, you know, this won't happen without funding. And in order to get the funding, we're just at this point looking for the seed funding to get it all developed. Enough sort of talk and work has gone on in the background. And the curator was very excited about it, has spent a bit of time, you know, free so far coming up with the themes and the ideas. And we've compiled lists of items held in Gisborne Museum and Auckland Museum and the Turnbull Library and things, all of which never get to be seen. So, you know, that would be an amazing opportunity for a lot of locals to see some of their own history. I think it all comes off. Anything else, John? Or I mean, that it's sort of in the main, I mean, hopefully if you've managed to read the actual sort of statement that explained it, that went with the application, that sort of is the background to why the applications come in. The Williams Trust is really sort of just an umbrella organisation because to do the application system for, you know, to go through that way, as opposed to being the actual people organising it, which will be a combination of sort of coordinators and interested people in Paihia and in the Williams family.
Yes, we're using, some of you probably already know this, the retreat, as it's called, the Henry Williams and Marianne Williams house at Pakaraka. We look after that and maintain and restore it. And also the family has over many years accumulated a collection of missionary items. And a lot of this is displayed on our website, which is the Williams Museum, oneword.com. And I certainly recommend you have a look at that if you're interested. And so we're using, or going to be using, as Camilla said, material from other museums throughout the country that has been collected, but also things that we have using the Henry and Marianne Williams material as a model of missionary life as it was then and for the decades that followed after their arrival. And again, as Camilla said, this extends well beyond the family to the community of Paihia, because in 1823, that was the first engagement or serious engagement of Europeans with the tangata whenua. And that's in 2023, that's what the family and the wider community is celebrating. So I think that's all I need to say at the moment.
It's lovely. Thank you, Camilla, and thanks, John. The Community Board is well aware of the significance of the Williams family in our local history, and this board was actually influential, previous boards, in the preservation and restoration of the Mary Williams House, which stands on the historic reserve today, and also the process in getting that classification in place. And we're very grateful as our council to the Friends of the Williams House and Library, who maintain beautifully the grounds and run the book library out of the garage there on site to gather funds to keep that property looking amazing. And this is quite a big event, quite a special event in the area, not just in Paihia, and quite a crucial part of the local history. So I wish you luck with it, and thank you for coming to talk with us. There may be some questions. I'll just open the floor in case anybody wants to ask you anything that they haven't read in the report. Any questions? Lane.
Yes, Madam Chairman. And forgive me because I'm trying to read the report on a very small screen. Gets a little awkward after a while. So if I've missed something, I apologise. What is the entry fee currently into the treaty grounds? Does anyone know?
Yeah, I think it's free for under 18s, and for New Zealand residents, I think it's $25, including the sort of the full experience thing.
Right.
Which gets you a cultural tour and a sort of a walk around and a guided tour version. But I'm not sure whether you can actually choose to just go in without the full version. But that's $25 for an adult, and 18s and under are free.
Okay, thank you. They used to have some scheme with locals. I didn't know whether that was still in vogue.
I don't know. I don't know either. There may be.
Okay.
Yes, there still is a local. You can be a friend of the treaty grounds and visit, and yeah.
Which works well, Madam Chair. I'm one of those myself. It means that every time we get visitors up here, we can take them along and take them through without the disincentive of having to pay full fare each time. So it's quite a clever system, and yes, it is still working.
Wonderful. And they do get notified of all the exhibitions and things, so word of mouth does help with those members. Any other questions?
Manawai has her hand up, Madam Chair.
Manawai.
Oh, kia ora. I was just reading through the application. I noticed that you say the local hapu and iwi who gifted the land to establish the mission station fully support this exhibition. I was just curious as to who the local hapu and iwi were that you mentioned.
Well, we've been mostly dealing with Ngāti Kawa at Te Tii Marae, because he's very involved with, across the entire Paihia bicentennial, the Williams family reunion is planned for a 4-day weekend in the middle of April, of that year, and a lot of that is going to be hosted at Te Tii. And so they're who we've been dealing with primarily, and Bishop Quito for the Maori Anglican Church. Who else, John, was there in that side of things? Have you spoken to anyone else? Oh, John's muted himself.
Sorry, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the original the tangata whenua that the Williams family originally connected with were Ngāti Rahiri and Ngāti Kawa. The land they originally settled on was gifted by Hamu, who was the wife or one of the wives of Te Koki, whose name appears on some land transactions later in the Church Missionary Society area. So they were the original people. Hamu was particularly important, and she was a very powerful person in her own right, and also one of the few women to sign the treaty.
Can I just add that I think there's a He Waka exhibition at Waitangi in the space at the moment where you would have the exhibition you're proposing, and I believe that it is free admission to that exhibition, but not to the rest of the grounds. So it might be something that you can ask for with your exhibition as well.
Yes, those things, you know, the finer sort of details of all of that sort of stuff haven't completely been worked out. Of course, that would be part of the bigger proposal about how it would look like and things. But so far, I mean, every question we've asked in terms of the area and things, they've said, yes, we can use their, you know, installation team and their cherry picker set up lighting and their security and their, you know, got the right level of air conditioning, all of those sorts of things. So I expect exactly that sort of thing. We'll be able to talk to them about access to the exhibition.
Ngā mihi.
That's lovely. Thank you, Camilla. Thanks, Manawai.
Can I just... Sorry.
Yes, John.
I'm just going to add possibly one final thing from me anyway, just to say that this is the first step in a funding process, which you're probably aware of, and we need to get to a point where we can develop and cost the proposal in order to go on to other funding organisations to get the major funding for the exhibition. And it's a very challenging process, but we have engaged a very competent museum developer who's working with us at the moment and this is what this current application is all about, to get to a point where we can submit a fully detailed and costed application for the whole exhibition. And the other thing I wanted to mention was what happens after the exhibition. A lot of money's poured into this. What then? We hope to use some of the materials that are brought together in the experience to help develop the museum at the retreat, which is the Williams House at Pakaraka that I mentioned earlier. So I just wanted to throw that in as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Camilla, for joining us. And we will make our decision on your funding application a bit later on in the meeting.
Thank you. So we just exit
all
now?
The best.
Yeah.
Yes, you're welcome to leave.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, just a couple of notes here on our
yes
virtual adventure. Lane, could you please stop sharing your screen? So there is a button.
I didn't know how I did that. That just suddenly happened. How do I stop it?
Fancy. Up in the there's a square with a arrow.
All actions.
Or a rectangle with an no. See that X? That X down the square with the X. Go down to the bar.
Oh yes.
Next to the microphone. Just hit that X.
Got that.
Thank you. Also, Madam Chair, we have Lorraine here to speak on behalf of the Power Road petition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lorraine, welcome. Lorraine Bentley.
Yes, that's
Good
me.
morning. I'm Belinda, chairing the meeting for today. You've come to speak to the Power Road petition that has been sent into the community board. Welcome, and you have 5 minutes to address us from now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I wonder if any of you were able to go down and look at Power Road at all during lockdown. Yep.
I was.
No, it's quite a distance out of our neighbourhoods, I think, Lorraine. Under level 4, we're not supposed to be tiki-touring around, but most of us are familiar with the area and the footpath.
Right. And as you will know, the footpath is now quite a bit lower than the road. And the trees have been taken out on the bend. So it makes it rather precarious, to say the least, because in the past we have had cars and trucks go over that bank, even when there were trees there. So I really feel a barrier is very important, because a lot of people over lockdown have been using the footpath, and we're grateful for it, but it has disadvantages. So yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say. So I'd be interested to know what you think of it, and if you'd like some photographs of it, I'd be happy to get that organised.
Thank you, Lorraine. Well, we have received the petition, and we do have the full report in our agenda, which we have all read. So we will be discussing this later on in the meeting. There may be some questions for you. I will just throw the floor open to the members to see if there's anything that's not in the report that they would like to ask you. Is that okay? Right. Kitty members in particular. Frank, anything you would like to ask Lorraine that you haven't read?
No, nothing at this point, Belinda, thank you.
Thank you. Lane?
No, I'm fairly familiar. I just live on Inlet Road, so I'm down there often. So thank you.
And we don't have member Hookway with us today. He's unwell, but we do have Councillor Rachel Smith here on our committee. Rachel, did you have any questions for Lorraine in relation to the petition?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions for Lorraine. I have questions for staff to this report, but thank you, Lorraine, for bringing the petition to the board.
And we also have Councillor David Clendon. Did you have any questions for Lorraine, David?
No, thank you. I'm not well. I routinely launch my kayak at the end of Power Road there, so yeah, I'm up and down there fairly often.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us today, Lorraine. And
one small thing I'd like to add is that the road is extremely narrow, and quite often when I've been going up the road, and other people have found the same, people come rather wide on the bend coming down, so you've got nowhere to move to because there's absolutely no shoulder. So that's just really important, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. Enjoy the rest of your day. Right, now we'll move on. Our next speaker is Anika, is it? Anika Dickey for our Kitty Charitable Trust. Page 96 of your agenda. Good morning.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Anika from our Kitty Trust. I'm speaking in support of our application for a Christmas tree for our town. Hopefully you've read the application. It's a pretty simple concept. As you know, the Lions Club have finished up with the Christmas parade this year. And so we've also taken that on, but through our consultation process with the wider community 18 months or 2 years ago, one of the themes or common occurrence in the theme that came through from the community was our lack of Christmas vibe and spirit in town. So that's been one of our projects of our Kitty to change that. So last year was our first year of doing something in that space, and we created the recycled Christmas pallet trees. And that went really well throughout the community. It brought a really positive vibe through town, which was really fantastic to see. And we also had our first Christmas tree in town. It was a small one, a fresh, alive one, so it did require a lot of maintenance, a lot of looking after throughout the period. And we just want to build on that. So we've been really motivated and excited to see what other towns are doing. We are the fastest growing town in the north and the biggest town, and we are a service centre for a lot of the wider area around here. So we've been working with Hamilton. They have a 6-story Christmas tree. It's incredible. It's massive. But what we have come up with is an 8 metre, so it's still a really big tree, 8 metre fully programmable lights that can change every year in terms of you can put text on the tree, so it scrolls around the tree, and lots of lights and colours, and it's just a really fantastic thing that we feel would be an anchor point in our community. Sort of our big dream would be to have it at the Domain and it to form part of that, you know, that sort of 6-week period where we bring the community together, and we could have, you know, Christmas movie night at the Domain, because obviously that's all getting developed. So it's a really fitting, could be a really exciting thing for our town. So we're asking for financial support for that tree. We're still working through all the logistics. Obviously, it's highly unlikely that we'll be able to get that tree this year due to COVID and congestion at the ports, etc. And also the Domain wouldn't be ready for it anyway. So we need to get onto this, as we have done, to get that investment so that we can secure a tree. Best time to probably buy that tree would be after Christmas. So I think we've timed it right. We've got a team of people working on this in terms of storage of the tree, maintenance, installation, etc. But we just think it's about time, you know, we had something really special like this, and it's going to be available to everyone. You know, it's equitable. Everybody has the opportunity to come together to this tree that's accessible to everyone. And it's a really hard time for a lot of families. So this should take the pressure off and bring some joy and excitement, I think, to a lot of the families in the area. So we're asking for your support.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anika. Did you mention it had a 10-year-ish life?
Yeah, it's got a 30,000 hours bulb life. So we do need to look after it. We do need to make sure it's stored well, and it's put up and it's taken down well. And so that's all part of our process to make sure that happens. But yeah, it's got longevity. It's not a once a year, or sorry, a thing that's only available for a year. We've got a long number of years of use.
Excellent. Great, exciting. Any questions? Lane, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
Oh, I'm biased, Madam Chairman, obviously, in the community, but I think this group has done a wonderful job, and they've come up with an idea that is going to, in the long term, actually save money. If you look at our costs of traffic regulation and that with Christmas deals. Certainly in our later discussions, we can debate the amount. I think the group is also to be congratulated that this is a major expenditure. Anika, forgive me, I don't have the report right in front of me, but we're looking at $50,000, and I think this group is to be congratulated. They've almost raised half of that already, so I think it's a major achievement for them. Anyway, that's my bias over and done. I'll talk later.
Right.
Thanks,
you will make your decision later. Frank, would you like to comment? You're muted.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think it's a fabulous idea. The whole concept appeals to me enormously. And I just congratulate the group on putting forward the proposal and bringing it to us.
Thank you.
Rachel, would you like to comment? I know you're excited.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions. I did want to just bring it to the attention of the board while Anika is online that she has been working on ensuring that CCTV and Wi-Fi accessibility is all sorted in the long term as well. So just wanting to raise that while she's online. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Manuela?
I just, hey Anika, good on you. I really think it's a great idea, and it shows that we're actually joining the world with being more sustainable and having something for long term, and something that actually helps the community, or well, yeah, helps the community feel better and happy. And you know, just look at what we've done through this lockdown, bring out the Christmas lights. Who knows, maybe we can bring them out next year in the winter too, and there'll be actually proper Christmas feeling. So yeah, I think it's an awesome idea. Good on you.
We're already growing your idea to a winter Christmas.
No, you
we've got some ideas for Christmas.
Manawa, did you have any questions for it? Yes.
Kia ora. I love the idea too, and I love the plan for it to, you know, it has longevity. I agree with what our other members have said, and I think things like this really do lift and nourish and feed people, especially in COVID. I think I look at the number and I think of all the people we could feed with $20,000, and I think when we have our deliberations later, I'll be balancing it against that community need, that where we deal with physical nourishment of our families and our communities. That's really the only thing that would make me think another number might reflect my support more. But I love the idea. I love your enthusiasm, and I think you actually do so much good. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you, Manawai. David Clendon, you haven't spoken yet. Would you like to comment?
No, equally, just I think it's would create a centre for the town at Christmas, which is always useful and important. I read in the report, I did wonder about issues like storage, but I know that our kitty are practical people, and as Anika's mentioned, all those issues, the logistics have been worked through, and I'm sure you'll succeed with, because it's a big chunk of infrastructure. Obviously, you don't throw it under the house for the 11 months it's not in use. But as I say, I've got a ton of confidence that they're practical people, well organised, and yeah, congratulations on bringing the application to the board.
Kia ora, David.
Thank you, Lane. Do you have another question?
Yeah, not another question, just another comment, Madam Chairman, if I may. While I may not totally agree with the fact that Kerikeri has become this service town for the vast area, the fact is that it's true. And so when we do something like this, it's not just for Kerikeri. It covers a much broader area of the north. So thank you.
Thanks, Lane. Thanks, Anika. And unless there's anything else you'd like to add, you're free to enjoy the rest of your day.
No, but I'm more than happy if anyone does have any questions, they can email me. More than happy to respond or keep anyone up to date. And we'll just keep trucking on.
Okay, we'll make our decision a bit later in the day. We are live streaming, so if you want to tune back in, feel free.
Okay, thank you very much.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Madam
Next,
Chair.
we have Aljon Fitzgerald.
Madam Chair,
Sorry,
we do have Aljon coming in via our funding advisor, Catherine Trewan. Due to connectivity issues, he's unable to join us live, but he is going to be on a mobile.
He's just trying to connect on his mobile now to see if that will connect rather than his landline. So if we can give him about 30 seconds, fingers crossed.
Thanks, Catherine. So I'm assuming Aljon is coming to speak to us about our funding application, which we're all familiar with, to put shade sails over the Kaio playground.
Yes, that is correct. So he's just trying to link on his phone at the moment. If we can't get him in, then I'll call on the mobile and I can translate for you.
Thanks, Catherine. So this is, as you're aware, we put a wonderful playground up at Kaio, and they actually won awards for it, and the community's been extremely enthusiastic about it, and it led to some placemaking on the toilets and beautifying that whole area. And I see in the IAMS reports the car park area has recently been done. Unfortunately, council did not move in the LTP under the health and safety issues to put shade sails over the playground, and it's unbelievably hot up in Kaio in summer. And it's a very popular, well-used and really important little asset in that community. So the community board has actually moved to put $30,000, which is almost the full amount, toward putting a 4 shade sail structure over the playground so that the community of Kaio will have a great little asset to picnic around and play under in this forthcoming summer, hopefully. So, John, if you're there. No, we can come back to you.
Yes, it's not connecting. Casey, if I give you his number, you may be able to dial him into the meeting now.
Okay. We will take that offline. Madam Chair, if you'd like to move on while we sort that out, we can. Oh, hang on. He's here.
He's here.
Yay.
Morning, John.
Oh, good morning, Melinda. Elaine.
So the floor is yours if you want to speak to it. I've just explained what the money is for the structure over your playground, shade sails, and that's to come out of our placemaking fund for the Kaio community. Did you want to say anything special about it? I know you haven't got great connectivity.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, no, it was fairly straightforward. Just reiterating the need for the sails and the popularity of the playground itself. In summer, some of the equipment probably wasn't the wisest thing to have bought a slide that is dark, because in the summer it gets really hot and you can probably fry an egg on it. But the idea was to get some shade cover over the playground, which on those hot days it becomes really unusable for the kids, unfortunately. It is a popular picnic area, and we've got shade cover. You may have noticed over the picnic tables. So it's coming together really nicely, and the shade sails would certainly add enormous value to the whole playground area. So I would hope you'd look favourably on that application, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, John. Do we have any questions in relation to this playground? We're all familiar with it and where it is.
And Bruce's toilets, so it's good.
And Bruce's toilets, yes. And that wonderful artwork on the toilets.
That was, Madam Chairman, that was one of the best uses of a little bit of money to make a great impact. I mean, those toilets, by comparison to what they were, for what was it a weekend's work, I think, Elton?
Yes.
It was absolute. I mean, it won the award at that conference, and it should have. It is just it epitomizes what we should be doing. Anyway, that's mine.
Great example of community placemaking.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, thanks for joining us, John.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, we'll make our decision later on during the meeting.
Hello.
See you.
See you. Bye.
And I think that might bring to the end our guest speakers, Casey.
Yes, Madam Chair, we are on to confirmation of previous minutes.
Okay, so item 6.1 on page 10. I'll move that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board confirm the minutes of the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board meeting held the 5th of August 2021 are a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
That was
Manuela.
Rachel Manuela. Thank you, Manuela. Now we'll vote by division.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Manawai.
Just wanted to propose that amendment,
Yes.
that correction in the minutes.
That was page.
That's page 13, item 5. It should read Manuai Wells and Sarah Wynyard Davis, not Josephine Reid Tereti.
Right. Any other alterations to those minutes? I'm happy to move with that amendment. Manuela, seconded. Can we have the screen up for voting, please? So, Lane.
Aye.
Frank.
In favour.
Manawai.
Aye.
And Rachel abstaining. Thank you. So move on to item 7.1, Chairperson and Members Report on page 18. The Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board note the reports from Chairperson Belinda Ward, Member Lane Eyre and Member Manuela Gamur-Hornell. Do I have a mover?
I'll
Yes.
move.
I'll second.
Thank you, Frank. Manawai? Any discussion? Who's up first? So my report there, any questions on my report? You'll note there that the three chairs on the 4th of August, we did the events investment funding deliberations with Catherine Truan. We did those virtually. There was 24 applicants and we partially funded 11 of those, and which was really quite exciting given the fact that we didn't have a lot of money and we had about $300,000 worth of applications. It was really good to be able to support a number of events across the district. So their applications, the file was about this thick. So really great to see communities getting in and applying. It seems to be getting harder and harder to get external funding for a lot of communities in these tough times. So always really nice to be able to help people in difficult times. The housing workshop that they had at council, that was actually a presentation by a number of agencies that are active in the area of social and affordable housing. That was very interesting, and I expect to see a lot more work going on in this area. The Big Ideas Lab is something I sit in on with councillors. Will Taylor runs that, very interesting, with people bringing forward their basically innovative ideas as to change and new things that we could be looking at as a council moving forward. They discussed the observations around Local Government New Zealand conference within the rapidly changing national picture of today. Probably not a lot else in there of interest. One thing for the Kirikiri residents to keep an eye out for would be under the issues. There's quite a bit going on down the end of Whārau Road at the moment, and mainly relating to encroachment issues in our reserve, which is actually a growing problem right across the area. If you have had a time to read the IAMS reports that Casey sent out yesterday, It's about 300 pages, I think. My advice is to read the second half of the report first. I started reading the first half, and it's actually May through to July. Very informative, a lot of updated information, some fantastic work being done in there by staff, and it will give you updates on the likes of our footpath and where we're at with the TIF funding and the PGF funding, roading, a lot of really, really interesting information in there, but it does actually mention the first time I've actually seen reference to encroachment issues. So I'm well aware that it is a growing problem in our area. Manuela, you had a question for me?
Yeah, I got a question and a comment, if you don't mind, Belinda.
Yes.
I'm really intrigued with that big ideas lab thing.
Yes.
And it's great that you can join them, the council people, on that. I really feel this would be something for great value to the council if we could somehow, I don't know the format or whatever, include community boards on this, like the community board members, because we do sit, as we all know, at the community level, and some of the big ideas will come from there. And I heard you mentioning that a few times now, and I think it's a great idea that they're doing that, but I feel the roots should be more included in that too. Not all the time, but every once in a while. So that's my comment. And I have a question, if you could elaborate a bit on the workshop or presentation you had on housing, and maybe can you tell us what Whanus Holdings is doing in that space, please?
I'm not sure whether I don't think I received a summary from that workshop. It was an invitation from council for councillors and staff to hear the agencies and what work they were doing around the housing area. And Far North Holdings, as you know, are registered now as a housing provider in Northland, not just the Far North, and are currently constructing a complex down at Kamo, just out of Whangaroa. That's their first project. I wasn't aware that that was underway, but great project, fabulous idea, and perfect combination, collaboration and use of the site. I expect to see some more ideas rolled out with time around our district, and I know that they are working in partnership with other providers and some iwi hapu groups as well. So other than that, I don't have any additional information to add. I'm not sure, Rachel might be able to enlighten us as to whether or not there was a summary of the discussion from the presentations of the various agencies that came. It was interesting to hear what they're all doing, and some are working closely together and others not so much. Sean, you can perhaps talk to that.
After Rachel, if she likes. Yeah, that meeting was to just try, and we called it a stock take of jigsaw pieces, because there's such a confused space in what the government's full court press on housing provision is for social and affordable housing. So we had a cross section of interest groups, from retirement villages to iwi to private developers and council members in one room, and flushed that out. To cut to the chase, what's happened is that Kainga Order has put out a $1 billion, it's like PGF, it's a fund that you can bid against competitively to provide for infrastructure for housing, as long as you join up with iwi as a local government. If you join up with iwi and with private developers in a joint venture, government will come and pay for the things like roading and streetlights and footpaths and sewage systems that would otherwise stop us from putting housing developments in. So it's quite a major incentive. But it's a big question for our elected members whether we're in this business or not, and they will let us know on the 4th of November. But at the moment, they've endorsed just getting as many baited hooks in the water as we possibly can to see if there's interest from Kainga Order in supporting some of the initiatives up north. When I say lots of baited hooks, I think there were about 16 ideas in the end that got tabled as expressions of interest for an 18th of August deadline. And we will hear in due course as to whether any of those are of interest to that central fund or not. And then and only then will we be able to put them in front of the elected members and say, okay, looks like we've got some interest. What do you want to pursue and what don't you? Wellington is deeply into providing social housing. There are many councils who just won't have a bar of it. So this is quite a big issue for our elected members, and we're obviously just supporting a debate so we can come up with a decision.
Thanks, Sean. Rachel, did you want to add to that?
I think at this point it's pretty much covered it off. Thanks.
Okay. And the other half of your question, Manuela, was in relation to the Big Ideas Lab. I guess we can only put that to Sean and Will as to whether they want to roll that out, whether council's keen to roll it out to all the community board members if they would like to, whether there's an option to be on there virtually as an observer or be involved. I choose to observe if I can, just to see what ideas, some great ideas coming out of that. If I'm available, I join. So yeah, just we can just request that and see what comes out of that.
Yeah, I
Any
think
other?
that the virtual thing, you know, where you can just observe, I think that would be also very helpful for a lot of other things too. It just keeps you informed, and if you have time or not, that's the other thing, or if you want to put the time in or not. But with a lot of things, it could be helpful. I know we could turn up and be the public and listening to the meetings, but for that, I have to travel way too far. Sounds stupid, I know, but it's just what it is.
Yeah, so you're right, and there are some workshops that I sit in on, and I think, oh, these would be invaluable. But unfortunately, that's not my call. It's up to council. I'm there at council's pleasure, and am often grateful to be included and invited, because some of these things, as you say, are very much flax roots up. So it's a case of perhaps council could look at that and decide whether or not, be a little bit more analytical in the workshops as to whether or not it was more beneficial for community board members to be sitting in on them virtually or not. But I agree, if you've got the time, it can be very interesting. And saying that, you know, some of the workshops I've sat in on, I have found not so beneficial. So it's up to the individual, and it would be good not to have to travel to sit in on those where we, you know, should we be allowed to be present. So perhaps, Sean, you could just take that on board and maybe look at some of the workshops that maybe not so much having community board members interactively on them, but to be able to sit in on them could be invaluable with, you know, furthering our knowledge on the ground.
Yeah,
any more questions? Yeah, thank you. Any more questions on my report? Move on to you, Lane. Thank you. Any questions for Lane?
No, it's good you had a report in, Lane. Awesome stuff.
Thank you. Thanks, Lane. Manuela, your report is next. Any questions for Manuela on her report?
Have we had any feedback on our last meeting with the alfresco dining license from council and all?
No,
at all?
No, I haven't. No.
Not even on what's happened and how it panned out? There was nobody. I mean, I was expecting somebody to say something to us. I don't know on what level or how, but at least saying, look, that was not ideal, or some sort of support for the board. And it was just silence. And that is just yet another blow to that whole fiasco. And I'm actually actively following up on that stage outside of the Duke of Marlborough that we think is not consented, but the Duke saying is consented, and it's actually the mayor that gave consent to that.
He said he thought it was, he wasn't sure. So I think we need to actually
I have put an RFS in. Melissa's trying to
saw that.
Get the bottom of it, but she's not very successful.
Okay, I like you, I did expect some sort of comment or comments or criticism to the board for our, in fact, my rather lengthy verbal diarrhea on it. It seemed to be falling a lot of it on deaf ears. Unfortunately, from the board perspective, we had done our homework really well. And although we had a lot of staff members in the room, many of our questions were unable to be answered or answered satisfactorily or answered in full. We have indicated in our recommendation to council that we will not be supporting the alfresco dining policy moving forward as from June 2022, unless that bylaw is urgently reviewed and is fit for purpose. And I look forward to us working with the Russell community to get a waterfront placemaking discussion underway with the varying interested community groups in Russell. And hopefully we as a board will be able to give the community's views on the overall foreshore of Russell and the beachfront and the legal road, which even the confusion over road not being road reserve and not being able to define where the road met the beach. And so there were so many unanswered questions, but I feel perhaps it's a classic case, Sean, of where we need to have huge local involvement in the input of that bylaw, which was completely probably the worst fit for purpose document or policy that I have ever seen, due to the fact that it's so outdated. And you know, like Manuela says, you know, we should have had some sort of response, but hopefully our message has sunk in, and come June next year, Russell will be in trouble if council hasn't rewritten that alfresco dining policy in line with what the community's wants and needs are. So that's all I can really say about that at this stage. I think it's up to us to move it. We've given the message to council that that bylaw requires urgent review. It's not in the 9 on the list that is out at the moment that I have seen. So hopefully Rachel and I can work on that one coming up through strategy and policy with the review of the mobile shop. Apparently it's being thrown in alfresco and mobile shop. I think they said to us it was being thrown in together, which is another really interesting. They're two hot topics and two completely separate policies as far as the board's concerned. Rachel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to confirm that the mobile shops and hawkers policy and the alfresco dining policy, my understanding is parts of those are being wrapped into this new road use bylaw, which is now on the agenda for next week's strategy and policy agenda.
So yes, this will be a case of Manuela, of the board having enough workshop time and input into the rewrite of that policy. Lane.
Yes, Madam Chairman, and I don't want to delay the meeting, but this, I think, is an example, as is the, excuse me, the reserves and other items. We try to fit so much into one policy. You know, the alfresco dining, for instance, we put that together with mobile shops. I'm not sure whether they really go together. And it just seems to me that we try to lump way too much in, whether it's convenient or time saving or whatever. We put a whole bunch of stuff into one policy when maybe it should be divided.
I agree. I think they're two separate beasts, and particularly in the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa or the Eastern Ward area, they're policies that we deal with a lot, and those bylaws difficult to monitor and difficult to enforce if they are lumbered together. But we will see. We'll watch the space and work with Rachel's committee on how we can have input into that. Any Further questions for Manuela in relation to her report?
Madam Chair, if I might excuse myself on the hour as advertised, but thank you for joining me in today. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for coming, Sean.
I'm just struggling again with the RFSs. That they, depending on which department, they just get totally ignored. Not even, you don't even get a acknowledgement that you actually submitted it. And I find that quite, for me, I know where I have to go and ask, but what is it for the people that don't know where to go and ask and get upset with it? So there's still a long way to go to refine that system, I think.
So Melissa is following up on a lot. She has been following up on my outstanding ones in particular. And I haven't heard back in the last day or two, but my latest comment was actually perhaps we could look at removing some of these off onto a separate list for unresolved RFSs so that they're not lost and they also form part of the induction program moving forward. Some of mine are unable to be resolved due to lack of resources, particularly funding through LTP or annual plan processes, also through some legal issues. So I feel we could do a lot more work in there, and I hear your frustration. You have so many outstanding RFSs, but some may be purely down to funding. And I think if we can get a separate list established, it was just an idea that I had. I'm not sure how practical it will be, that the outstanding ones, you know, some of them go back 4, 5, 6 years, so that they're not sitting there and don't get lost is my concern. I put them on there so they won't get lost, not so that I want to have a dig at the fact that they're not resolved. There are reasons why. And I'm sure some of yours are the same, Manuela, that there's logical reasons why they can't be resolved, but we need to be able to inform the public as to where they are within the process. It may be that, you know, they fell out of the LTP, they didn't make it, so they dropped off. Likewise, they won't appear in the annual plan if they haven't come through in the LTP. So some of these are money issues or big ticket items, or simply just don't keep making it into the budgets.
I also find that a lot of the RFSs that are like maintenance, you know, things that need to be looked at when they happen, that they get passed on to the contractor, and the contractor just gets back obviously to council saying it's done. And the council goes, yes, it's done, ticks it off, comes to me and said, it's done, we're closing this RFS. And I go past where the job should have been done. It's not done. And it happens so often. And I go back and say, it's not done. Look, it has not been done, what you're going to do. So there's so much work involved for staff to go and pick on the contractor and say, you haven't done your job. And there's something for the review, I guess, whoever reviews the contractors. And we asked that before, who and how are you reviewing contractors? And that's very poor from where I come from. But I don't know how to tackle that and make people aware of it, or who. I guess I should document it and have it in a list and tell them, look, this is what happened. And it's always the same contractor, and it's a large contractor.
Rachel, did you want to comment?
I don't have any comments at this stage, but I am keen to continue this conversation offline.
Cool.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Manawai.
I'm grateful that our members are telling it like it is. That's what I liked about the reports. Yeah. Kia ora.
Thanks, Manawai. So we'll continue to work on the RFSs, and there is some great progress happening behind the scenes. It's not all just falling on deaf ears. It's a tricky one to resolve a lot of those, and I just feel rather than look like they are inactive. If they are a budget issue or a legal issue or even a district plan issue, we need to actually have a separate column or a separate list so that we can not lose sight of some of these long-standing ones in particular. There was some movement in the IAMS reports, Manuela, when you get time to go through the May to July ones that Casey sent out yesterday. There is some comments in relation to some of our outstanding action sheet reports that will interest you in there. Anything else for Manuela? Okay, so we were going to vote on that. So moved by Frank, seconded by Manawai, that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board note the reports from Chairperson Ward, Eyre and Camille Hornell. Lane, in support. You're mute. You must be muted, Lane. So
Sorry, my apologies, Madam Chairman.
Accept,
Yes,
Casey.
yes, again.
Lane, yes.
Yeah.
And Wala, Frank.
Yes.
Manawai.
Aye.
And Rachel abstaining. Right, we'll move on to item 7.2, the Power Road petition.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a bit of discussion around this. I will put I will put this recommendation. I'll move it to put it on the table. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Lane. Oh, sorry. I'm happy to take this in two parts, that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board A receives the Par Road petition. I've moved, Lane has seconded. I'll put that to the vote. Yes, from me. Lane?
Yes, well, I seconded
Manuela?
it, yes.
Yep.
Frank? Manawai?
Aye.
Rachel abstaining. So that's carried. Now, I'm happy to have discussion around B prior to...
Sorry, Madam Chair, we'll just move in second B if you wanted to take that in two parts.
Yes, we can. Okay. Would somebody like to move B? I will read it. Acknowledges staff will complete a post-construction road safety audit. Do I have a mover?
That. Thank you, Manuela.
Thank you, Manuela. Seconder?
Yep.
Manawai, was it?
Yes, it was me.
Thank you. Sorry.
Madam Chair, I did just want to advise that we do have Nick Marshall here representing the NTA. If you have any questions for staff, we also have Helen Ronaldson, if there's anything that she may be able to add.
Helen. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just ask, we are noting that council will undertake the roading audit. We're not, or are we asking them to? I just want to be quite clear in my own mind.
We are asking them to complete, or we're acknowledging that they will complete a post-construction road safety audit. I would assume that that is part of, Nick can probably advise us otherwise, or Helen, but that is actually part of the job, that do they always do a post-construction safety audit, or is this an additional audit?
Yeah. My question, I suppose, what I'm getting at is, are we acknowledging that they would or will, or are we specifically asking them to in this case?
That's what I would like clarified, Frank. Thank you. Yes. Nick, please advise us. Inform us.
Through the chair.
Yes.
We're acknowledging that we are already planning before this petition came along to do the post-construction road safety audit. And it is part of our best practice on our larger, more complex projects that we do a safety audit. All of them we've got to consider whether we will. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So you will be doing one on this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. But can I just ask, Nick, that footpath, from reading the report, that footpath complies with all the safety aspects of the construction of the footpath?
In general, yes, but that's the point of the post-construction audit, is to see whether lost in translation sometimes between design and construction, or constraints found during construction lead to a change in design. So the post-construction is to see whether there's either residual risk or new risks that have been created inadvertently that need to be addressed.
Thank you, Nick. Helen, did you want to comment?
No, I would have just confirmed pretty much what Nick has been saying. So, yeah, the focus is about the residual risk that still might exist after the footpath has been put in place. So that's what we need to do this audit for.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, hands up, please, if you want to speak. Rachel, I have you next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple of questions around an outcome-based approach. So it appears we've got a situation here where, and I want to acknowledge that the report outlines that the risk rating is likely to be deemed moderate or minor, in which case nothing will be done. And that concerns me because we do have a significant part of the community acknowledging that they feel unsafe. So I'm just wanting to get a feel perhaps from NTA as to whether or not there's a middle ground here. I note that the report states that it'll be a cost of $50,000 to $70,000 to install a safety barrier. Are there other options that could be considered to ensure that the community feels safe? Because what I'm reading in this report is that we will do a post-construction road safety audit, but the likelihood is it will come out as minor to moderate, which means that nothing will be done. And that's not what the Par Road community are asking for. So I'm just keen to hear if there's a bit of a middle ground there. Thank you.
Through the chair, potentially. I haven't personally visited the site post-construction, and normally when we get the independent review from the safety engineers, we would then go out to the site, see their report and have a look at it, and usually take our network inspectors, so Apakali and her team, and see whether there's, I guess, a cheaper or more easier intervention, which could be things around what the edge of the road look like. So that's sort of general road maintenance elements. And then the other one is whether there's a residual project which would happen when either a resurfacing or in a future rehabilitation of the road, which would be normally the opportunity we would look at curb and channel, that sort of urbanisation, which helps reduce speed. The other element that I forgot to include in the report, and I apologise for that, is we have the speed review coming in the next 12-ish months for the Kerikeri area. And that'll be another opportunity to look at measures to control the speed along the road, which is probably the best way to manage this risk. So a guardrail is kind of like an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Reducing the speed first is actually solving the problem before it happens. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Nick. Rachel, did you have another question?
Yeah, if I could just do a secondary. Nick, my question is around whether or not there are opportunities through that process for the community board to continue working on, I don't know, perhaps potential placemaking opportunities or something. Just really keen to make sure that we capture next steps in this so that we can say, yep, we're keen for a post-construction road safety audit to be undertaken, but can that come back to the board so a next steps conversation could be had as to how we could address it. Because at the moment, I feel like this is the end point for the community board. And I do think that there is opportunity to continue looking at how this could be addressed. So any comments on that would be really appreciated. And Madam Chair, if I may be so bold, the board may like to consider a minor amendment tweak to capture that. Thank you.
Through
Thanks,
the chair.
Rachel. Yes, go, Nick.
In terms of the having something further to go on, I would suggest that's a decision for you guys as a group to make and have that as a an amendment to the resolutions in there. In terms of the placemaking, yes, there is definitely an opportunity there, subject to yourselves agreeing that there's a need and therefore some form of funding for that. In terms of the road safety audit, that would sit outside it because this road safety audit follows an NZTA prescribed process, which is to do with, because it is funded by, I'm pretty sure this one's part funded by NZTA, it's got to follow their rules. And to get that additional works to happen, it needs to meet their funding criteria, which is this procedure is how we figure that out. So if it meets the criteria for funding by Waka Kotahi, then we'll do it through the road safety audit. If it doesn't, but there's still an opportunity, it would need to come back to this forum.
Thank you, Nick. Lane.
Madam Chairman, I'm concerned that we again appear to be wandering off into areas that are not really our ballpark. I don't know that we fund roading, although we allocate priorities with footpaths. We've certainly never got into roading, and I don't believe we should. Par Road it's interesting. I mean, I live 100 meters away from the disputed area. People were walking on the road before we built the footpath. Now I know that's possibly, and they've been walking on that road for, I've been up here 25 years, and they've been walking down that road. So the danger to anyone has not increased by putting the footpath in. I suppose the car can fall a greater distance than just off the road, but I would suggest that doesn't make a great deal of difference to the person being impacted. And if we're going to get into safety audits on roads, I have a couple on Inlet Road where the footpath is literally 100 mil from the edge of the road, which is 80k. So I just don't think it's something that we should be looking at. I take Councillor Smith's point that there is a number of people in the community that have a concern, and I think we should pass that on to the appropriate parties, but I don't think we should start getting involved with funding roading or anything else, my opinion.
Thank you, Lane. Next we have Frank and then David.
Yeah, I don't know that I've got a lot to add. The question that came to my mind, is this out of footpaths funding or roading funding, picking up on Lane's point? If this money we're talking about, did I somewhere understand that that came out of footpath budgeting, which is our allocation, or does it come out of roading?
The report states, Frank, that on page 27, after the road safety audit, that has actually been budgeted for in the annual plan. The road safety audit, as Nick said, is something that they will do. That's been budgeted for, but any improvements as a result of this have not been budgeted for. So we're now looking at the fact that it's stated in the report that the funding would be sought from the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board's new footpath program budget. Well, we have already prioritised our footpaths. In fact, there is an agenda item in here today. A guardrail in this location would typically cost around 50 to 75,000. I'm not sure if that's installed. Now, if the purpose of the guardrail is a traffic safety issue, that would be a roading issue in my view, not a footpath issue. And I am not sure how the board feels about that coming out of our new footpath program budget, bearing in mind that's probably going to be cut when we hear from NZTA later this month in relation to how much we're actually going to be able to achieve due to COVID in the next 3 years or even within the next financial year. So from a board perspective, you may wish to take that into consideration with the amendment of B. That was certainly 50 to 75,000 we know would build us another footpath somewhere in our much needed communities in our ward. So I'll just sow that seed for you to think about. I have David Clendon with his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wonder, can we have an indication of when this audit's likely to be completed, and what is the mechanism to ensure that that report does come back to the board? Because things do have a habit of going missing and disappearing into the ether. So we could have some clarity about the deadline and the mechanism for making sure that the report does come back to the board.
Through the chair, for your first question around how long will this take, that depends on the lockdown provision. So this is an activity that can only be undertaken in level 2 or level 1 because it's not considered essential work. So I would anticipate, but we're all crystal ball gazing on this, that probably can't have the site work because it requires a site visit for another fortnight or so. And typically the turnaround for the site visit, writing the report, and then having the various parties who are involved in reviewing and approving it typically takes 2 to 3 weeks. So I would imagine it's 4 to 6 weeks from now would be a reasonable target for when the report's finished. And then second question, if you wish to add a resolution to have a copy of that report presented to the community board, we can do that. And I would suggest that would be 2 months to 3 months from now, allowing for COVID lockdown implications. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. So we're looking at probably a 3-month time frame at minimum.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I heard subject to COVID and all of that. I would have thought the November meeting would have that report. You indicated a couple of weeks and then 6 weeks. That's 2 months. I'm pushing it a bit because, as I say, these things do have a habit of disappearing, and then in time people forget, and we continue to have unhappy residents and nothing to tell them. So can we aspire to have a report before this board's November meeting, and perhaps that could go as part of the resolution, subject to unexpected interruptions like further COVID lockdown?
David, we do meet first Thursday of December as well.
Sorry, Madam Chair, if you don't mind me adding that for November, we actually are the second Thursday due to another meeting scheduled on that first, a council meeting or there was a clash there. So it is the second, and the deadline for the report to be in would be the 26th of October to reach your table, your community board table on the 11th of November. But we can add those details into the amendment if it does come to that.
Yeah, so that would be quite tight for November, wouldn't it? Okay. Frank, did you have your hand up again? Helen, sorry, didn't see you there.
No, that's all right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to follow on from Casey's point, basically, is that the timing to get the report approved and ready for that 26th of October is actually going to be, by the time it goes through GM and manager approvals, we wouldn't be able to meet it based off what Nick was saying, and that is in a hopeful situation for COVID scenarios. So I think the November meeting is stretching it a bit, because according to our timeframes, it would need to be to Glen for review by the 18th of October, according to the timeframes that we have, which is just, that's not going to be enough time for them to do the report.
No. Okay, thanks for that, Helen. Frank, back to you. You're muted.
Sorry, Madam Chair. No, I was just wanting to clarify the point earlier. I was aware that the the report made the comment that it was footpath money, but Lane was expressing a concern as to why we were involved in roading, and I was just trying to draw those two together.
Mm. Yes, I think it's a valid point. Whether you want to propose an amendment to B or add a C. I mean, going back to the report and to what Rachel said earlier, the odds are that this will come back not of high significance. Reading the report and the content of that definitely implies that it is not an extremely high risk and that a guardrail may not be recommended. If that's the case, then that is fine. There will be no discussion around the funding, and there may be at that point some alternatives looked at. At this stage, the report does state that if a guardrail is required in this location, that it would come out of our new footpath program budget. And Manuela and Manawai, you haven't spoken yet. I'm not sure what your feelings are on this. Manuela, did you have anything to contribute as mover of this?
Yes, I would like to say that this is not something we need to discuss. I appreciate that the people brought a petition to us and we accepted that. It has nothing to do, it's roading, it's not footpath. I sit in the same corner as Lane and we're wasting our time.
Thank you. Manawai?
Oh, kia ora. Yes, I agree that when I read it, I thought it was a roading issue, not footpath issue. And I'm very reluctant to see any of our footpathing resources that we have oversight over going into the solutions of this issue, which our very passionate community has brought to our attention. Kia ora.
Yes, thanks, Manawai. Lane?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, sorry, I put my hand up and then, of course, other people say what I'm going to say. But reiterate again, who's making the decision that this would come out of our footpath funding?
This is in the staff report, and unless Helen or Nick can comment on it, I'm assuming that it's because the job is a footpath and they have no budget to put the guardrail in should it be required, that it would come out of our footpath program budget. If our sentiments are strong that it shouldn't, then we need to signal this in an amendment. Lane?
Well, Madam Chairman, it seems to me that community members have given us a petition. They observed something, and we've received that, or at least I believe we will receive that report. We do nothing more than give it to the experts to make any determination. I noticed in the report there's been one car crash on Parr Road in 10 years. It's not exactly mayhem. And so any discussion about budgeting changes and that, I'm not sure who's making those decisions. And if they're making those decisions, maybe they can make some other ones in our benefit. Can I be that facetious? Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thanks, Lane. Back to you, Nick. You hearing our sentiments?
Yes, I do. Through the chair, sorry, my cell phone just started ringing, so I just hung that up. The reason we would look to have it come out of the footpath budget is at the moment this project is still active because we haven't finished the closeout process. So if through the closeout process, the road safety audit, it comes up with something that needs fixing, then that should come out of the same budget that the project was built from. If this had come, say, in a year or two's time, then it would be out of our general road safety budget, and this particular guardrail would be ranked or prioritised against all other similar sites that require guardrails. And I can tell you now that generally we only look at our high risk, high speed rural roads, such as say Te Ahuahu Road or Old Bay Road, so those kind of roads, or Kaitaia Awaroa. And it would be very unlikely to sit at the top of the pecking order and attract the funding. So either it'll get funded as a residual piece of works as part of the footpath, or it will sit on a very long list far down the pecking order for rural road safety improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Now, either way, will this road safety audit, post-construction road safety audit, come back to the board as of right, or do we need to request that to come back?
At the moment, is the way the agenda is written through the chair, sorry. Yes, it will not come back to the community board unless we amend the resolutions.
Thank you, Nick. So Manuela and Manawai, as mover and seconder, I'm in your hands if you want to add to B or add a C in relation to that a report come back to the community board following the road safety audit for us to discuss whether or not we are happy with the funding coming out of our new footpath budget, program budget. What I'm hearing loud and clear is that we are fairly unanimous in the report that we do not want that to come out of our footpath budget. Helen, you wanted a final comment on that?
Through the chair, I was just going to say you can receive the report without taking it further in terms of funding. So you could put in the request that to make sure that the report, the road safety audit report comes back to you so that you can review, and then you can just request to receive it, and then you guys can decide amongst yourselves when you've received it as to whether you want to take further action or not.
Thank you, Helen. That's as I thought. Okay, so we've got B, acknowledges staff will complete a post-construction road safety audit and that the results be brought back to the community board for consideration. Are you happy, Manuela, to add that, Manawai?
Can I
second that? Yes.
Sorry for me being not very good at standing orders and how it works.
Yes.
So because what did I do? I moved it, did I? Yeah.
You moved and seconded B only to get it on the table for discussion.
Yeah.
And now I'm suggesting that we add an amendment to that the report come back. Has Casey got it here? Acknowledges staff will complete a post-construction road safety audit as part of the already scheduled budgeted program of works and request post-construction road safety audit. Can you see that on your screen, Manuela?
Yeah.
Manawai? Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Come back to the community board subject to COVID restrictions by November 11th, 2021 or December 2nd, 2022.
Just need some clarification on, through you, Madam Chair, whether or not you want that to be back to you by the November 11th or the December 2nd meeting.
The indication is the November 11th would be too tight a time frame to have it in by the 26th of October for our agenda. I'm happy to leave it at December the 2nd so as not to put too much pressure on everybody. I don't know that it would come back in time to get into print.
What do you reckon, Manawai? I still
I'm happy.
I mean, for me, I'm most likely going to abstain from this because it's not something I think we should be voting on. And we're getting blackmailed and taking money off us to get a solution done. That's how I feel. That, if there's a report coming back and saying something has to be done, then the community feels like we should say yes because they did come to us. So, don't know.
Wouldn't they still need a resolution from us to grant the funding for approval?
That's not how
to
I
council?
understood it. But
Yes,
yeah.
because it's the community board is given the footpath budget each year, and other than taking monies out of our renewals, which doesn't have a set list and plan, it just has a figure next to it in the LTP. I can't see how they could take the money out of our footpath budget without our consent.
Yeah, but the point is that we all made is that we don't feel it's a footpath issue.
Correct.
It's a voting issue. So somehow that gets lost again and it gets just pushed through.
The audit is in reference, the road safety audit is in reference to the construction of the new footpath that hasn't been closed off yet.
Yeah.
So we're still talking footpath. It's whether the results of the audit, if they have to have the guardrail, that's a different discussion and we can vote on that. If this report comes back to us, then we can actually discuss the outcome of that. If the report doesn't come back to us, I'm not sure whether the money would just be taken out of our budget anyway. Reading the report, it's not likely that the guardrail would go up anyway. So I'm just trying to I guess, play devil's advocate here to ensure that the report comes back to us. And so we're not talking in circles. We're aware that they're looking at our footpath budget. And the message I'm getting loud and clear from everybody is that do not touch our footpath budget. So if the report comes back, don't touch it.
In politically correct terms.
Madam Chairman, there is another option.
Yes, Lane.
We could close the footpath and just everybody go back to doing what they were doing before we put it in.
Which was walking on the road.
That's correct.
Yes, well, that's not likely to happen now. We have a near completed footpath. Final word to Frank. You've got your hand up, and Helen.
Yeah,
everyone's got their hand up.
I'm struggling with C. We're actually we're saying to council, we want this audit by 2 December. Now, the bottom line is, if we think about it, as you rightly say, the feeling of the board clearly is that our footpath money is not going to go to this cause. And why therefore are we saying to council we must have this report back? If we're not going to grant money from our footpaths to fix this issue, the rest of it becomes academic, and we've got a lot of people doing a lot of work for not a lot of benefit as far as this board is concerned. I accept the audit from a road construction safety point of view is valid and should be done, but that's irrespective of our footpath allocation, I think, unless I'm missing a point.
So partially yes, because the job has been done, but the post-construction road safety audit has yet to be carried out. That is part of the job of the footpath construction. So therefore they have to do that. We simply are asking for a copy of that report to come back to us, and that will determine whether or not a guardrail or anything is going to be constructed further in the completion of that audit, so the safety audit. So without the report, we won't know whether the guardrail is going to go up or not. So it's just keeping us in the loop, Frank. I think there's a few people with their hands up. Manawai, I can't see. Have you got your hand up?
No, I don't, but I will jump in and say something now that I'm here. I think this is very similar to some of the things that have already been happening to us recently, or maybe not so recently, is it kind of feels like these matters are, while they might sit outside of what our core business is, I think, and it's to me, it's clearly a rating issue, not a footpath. I can see where the alignment with footpath seems to be creeping in. But it's like, and this isn't anything in our stuff, but it's like we're being coerced by suggestion into these things. And when I get what Frank is saying, is if we ask for the report to come back to us, while I might want to know what some of the details in the report is, just by asking for that report, it seems to include us in the conversation. It's almost a foregone conclusion that we will be part of the solution. So I don't want the report to come back if it suggests that we are opening the door to our resources and footpaths. But what is the alternative? That the report come to you, Belinda, instead, unofficially, or through another way, instead of coming to the board, so that we're still included, but it's not part of our formal request as a board, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Sorry, Whānau.
No, thanks for that, Manawai, because it's probably we all express ourselves differently, and my reasoning behind wanting the report or feeling the report should come back to the board is so that we can monitor the outcome and so that we are in the loop in relation to we're going to be accepting a petition from these residents, and we have a duty toward our residents and ratepayers to take note of the community sentiments. And if the report comes back that no guardrail is required, then they may not stop at that point, and we will still be involved with the members of the community. But the report will give us additional expertise and knowledge to deal with the situation from the petitioner's perspective. David Clendon, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, essentially, it's just the point you've just made, that the board has accepted a petition. We just voted on that. I can't help feeling overthinking it at this point. We've had a petition. The people believe that their safety has been compromised, and without information from this report, the board really doesn't have an answer. If board members didn't want any part of this, be it footpath or roading issue, then you ought not to have accepted the petition. Yes. But having accepted it, then the next obvious step is to get the information from this assessment and then make further decisions. I just can't help feeling the present conversation is a little bit circular, and really just we need that report back and then make some new decisions from there.
Madam Chair, may I suggest that if both the original mover and seconder are not comfortable with how this is now structured, perhaps you move it as an amendment and then that's voted and it can be included as part of the substantive motion, if that's the direction you want it to go.
Yep. So we don't really need a C.
So you can either completely take this out. We can completely take this out, removed. Is that what you're suggesting? Instead of
adding a C, that we acknowledge staff will complete a post-construction road safety audit and that the report be brought back to the board by the 2nd of December 2021.
As an amendment, yes?
So I'll move that as an amendment to resolve it, because I feel we need to get the report, and I hear the sentiments as to buying into it, but we have a
second.
Do I have a seconder for that?
To be administratively correct, I'll go for second.
Thank you, Lane.
May I suggest that it should, a better phrasing may well be, acknowledges staff are yet to complete a post-construction safety audit and a copy of which will be forwarded to the board. We don't have to go through dates or anything else.
So I'll read that out. That B will read so we've got 2 Bs. Yeah. Got one above Casey. Do we need that?
So the B will this motion above, Madam Chair, the amendment will then
Lapse.
become the substantive, right? If this
Right.
is voted through, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Do we need to have a C? Can we just
No.
have that as one
That's
B?
all big.
Yeah. Okay.
So A will be receives the report. B will be acknowledges staff have yet to complete the.
Acknowledges
is how
staff
you'd
have
like
yet
it
to
to see.
complete post-construction road safety audit and request a report come back to the community board.
Yep, good.
Do we want to put 2nd of December 2021 to keep an eye on that time frame?
I don't believe that's our position, Madam Chair. The staff will do it when they can do it, I guess.
True. Right, I so move. Lane, you second?
I do.
I'll put that to the vote. Yes, Lane.
Yes.
Manuela?
No, I abstain. Thank
Abstain. Frank?
Yes, I'm in favour.
Manuai?
Yes.
And Rachel abstain. That's carried. Thank you. Now,
So
would you like to have a break?
Sorry. So the amendment will become the substantive motion and we'll just need to vote on.
So we need to vote
that.
on that.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And just to carry on, sorry, to answer your question, yes, please, come for stop break after this vote.
So I'll read that out, that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board, the amendment acknowledges staff have yet, the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board receives the Paro petition. And acknowledges staff have yet to complete post-construction road safety audit and request a report to come back to the community board. Now the amendment will become the substantive motion and we will vote on that.
So we'll have a mover and a seconder for the substantive.
Myself and Lane.
Yep.
Seconded.
And we will, sorry. Oh, was it? Vote by division.
Yes. Thank you. Yes from me. Lane.
Yes.
Manuela.
That's for both A and B now, eh?
Abstain.
Yeah.
Frank.
In favour.
Aniwai.
Aye.
And Rachel abstain. Thank you. Now we'll take a break. Is 5 minutes enough or would you like 10?
5 is fine by me.
Right. See you all back in 5 minutes. It's nearly 11:50, 11:55. Right, welcome back everybody. We are now up to item 7.3, I think, Casey, is it?
Correct, Madam Chair. I'll just bring it up on my screen for you now.
Now, this is our footpath priority list that we did a couple of meetings ago, and Casey and I have since had a bit of a workshop on it, and we've formally brought back our top 10, and we have integrated the 4 messy lists that we had all into one with the remaining footpaths, which is a living document. So feel free to add any footpaths at any time. You can forward to myself or Casey, and we will add those onto the additional list. In the meantime, here we have I will move this recommendation that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board A agree to the 2021-2024 Footpath Program to include the following top 10 prioritised, and completion of works is dependent on availability of associated budgets. And B, acknowledge the estimate figures provided are indicative and require finalisation through design and tender processes. And C, delegate authority to council staff to alter completion order of the works within the existing list, subject to staff reporting back to community board of changes made. Now, is that prior or post, C? It implies it's post.
Madam Chair, if I could suggest that we get a seconder to put it on the table for discussion, and then Nick can comment. Was that you, Manuela?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. And Nick does have his hand raised to comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, Nick, thank you.
Through the chair, my understanding of that is that it would allow us to, I guess, change the order of the works and the exact budget, which is taking account the fact that the estimates are exactly that, the estimates of the exact cost it will come out once we do the detailed design and get the pricing from the contractor. So
Aroha mai, Nick, sorry.
Yeah,
you don't have your microphone over your head, do you?
Yeah. Can you put your mic down?
I'm sorry, that's exactly what I've done. Good call.
Thank you.
I could just hear you.
I'll
Yes,
try again. Through
you.
the chair, that is it would be a report after we've made the changes, as long as those changes are within these approved budgets and this list. So it allows for us to potentially change the order if there's constraints that mean one of them's taking longer, or the fact that the exact price won't match the estimate once we work our way through detailed design and get the pricing from the contractor.
Thank you for that, Nick. Now, we're quite passionate about the order of our top 10, and hopefully there would be some communication back to us prior to that order being changed. Frank, you want to comment?
Yes, you're picking up the very point. You and Casey have spent time going through the original priorities, realigning them and bringing it forward to us. If we're now going back and saying, but that can be changed again without reference to the board, it really is saying that the work you put in to get the priorities in line with what you thought the board's feeling was, it would seem to me to be fairer that given you've done that work, if there's a decision to alter the priorities again, that come back to you before you reported a fait accompli.
Thank you, Frank. So I think perhaps to amend that, Nick, to make us feel more at ease about the intent, I'm sure is good. And see if we could perhaps just amend that last part to read delegate authority to council staff to alter completion order of works within the existing list, subject to staff reporting back to the community board prior to changes made instead of changes made.
Could could I make another suggestion that we delegate the authority to council staff to alter completion order of works in association with the community board? In other words, if they want to change it, they involve the board in the decision as to the changes.
I'm happy with that. Any more comments? No? Can't see any hands up. Any more discussion around this?
Just want to confirm, Madam Chair, that yourself and Manuela, as
Yeah.
the original mover and seconder, are happy with the changes as listed in
happy-
C. Are you
I'm
wanting
happy
both
with-
within the existing list in association with community board, as well as subject to staff reporting to the community board prior to changes made, or just in
So
association?
I'll just read
with-
that out, C. So I'm happy with the amendment. Delegate authority to council staff to alter completion order of works within the existing list in association with community board, subject to staff reporting back to the community board prior to changes made. No, we don't need both.
No. Correct.
Association with the community board, full stop.
Correct.
I'm happy to move that with that amendment. Manuela, are you happy to stay seconding that? Okay.
Affirmative, yeah.
So we'll put that to the vote if there's no more discussion around that top 10 list. Thank you. Yes from me.
Aye.
Lane,
Aye.
Manuela,
Yep.
Frank,
Yep.
Manuai, and
Aye.
Rachel abstaining. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7.4. Page 62. Our favourite subject is road naming, isn't it? Thank you, Nick. Thanks for joining us.
You're
Move the
welcome.
recommendation that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board, pursuant to Council's road naming and property addressing policy number 2125, name a private right-of-way, Bay Ridge Lane, that is currently addressed at 785 Pangeri Road, Waipapa, as per map A3272742. Do I have a seconder?
Aye.
Thank you, Lane. Any discussion around this? No, I'll put it to the vote.
Only that I'm going to be abstaining.
Yes. Thanks, Manuai. Manuela, you want to comment?
I would just like to clarify something, please, if we
Yes.
can. It's the consultation over road names with iwi.
Yep.
I know we've gone through this before, but just for myself again, is that something the staff always does? And why do we have on some names we get replies or we get an iwi input and in some we don't?
Yes, so that is the policy, is to put it, or to actually, the wording is to have consideration. It's in there, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I understand that. I understand it's policy, but there's no consistent.
No, there isn't. So,
Okay.
so yes, in answer to your question, iwi are always notified. They don't always respond, and sometimes there are different people who are notified, or it's passed on to a different person to respond, and the format or the way in which they respond may be different to the regular person who receives it and responds. So yes, generally a response is requested.
Okay, and it's a recommendation from iwi, that's all?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Put that to the vote. Any more questions on that? Okay. Thank you, Casey. It's a yes from me. Lane?
Yes.
Manuela?
Yes. Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Manawa, you want to abstain?
Yes.
And Rachel abstain. Thank you. Carried. And I will put the second item 7.5, the road naming of 7A Kent Street at Whangaroa. The recommendation is that the Bay of Islands Whangaroa Community Board, pursuant to Council's road naming and property addressing policy number 2125, make a right-of-way Gilligan's Lane that is currently addressed at 7A Kent Street, Whangaroa. Do I have a seconder?
Yep, Manuela.
Thank you, Manuela. Any discussion around this one?
Just to acknowledge the response from Tangata Whenua in the process, and I'll be abstaining as well.
Thank you. Rachel?
Manuai beat me to it. Thank you, Manuai.
Any more discussion? Put that to the vote. Thank you. It's a yes from me. Lane?
Aye.
Manuela?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Manawa chooses to abstain, as does Rachel Smith. Thank you. Right, moving on to page 81, funding applications. Sorry, I'm looking away. I've got two screens going here. I can find page 81. This is the fun part, isn't it? Right, so our first request was the guest speakers we had this morning was Camilla and John, I think. Yes. Henry and William Williams Memorial Museum Trust. They are requesting, I've just lost the whole thing here somewhere. Sorry. I'll read off yours. I can see it, Casey. Thank you. That the Bay of Islands, I'll take these individually. That the Bay of Islands Whangaroa Community Board approves the sum of $4,000 plus GST for applicable be paid from the board's community fund account to Henry and William Williams Memorial Museum Trust for cost towards concept development for place, faith and family. Pay here 1823 to 2023 to support the following community outcomes. Communities that are healthy, safe, connected and sustainable. Do I have a mover? Have a mover to get this on the table?
Yeah, I will move it, Manuela.
Oh,
thank you. Thanks, Frank. Now we have a request here for 50% of the funding, which is $4,000. This is actually, if you look at the detail on this, this is actually for the applicant is seeking funds for 50% for the facilitator fees and 50% for the concept document. The facilitator fees are $3,000 and the concept document is $1,000, totaling $4,000, which is 50% of both. Mainly, I can see the discussion will be around the facilitator fees, but this is actually to employ a museum curator, Rose Williams from Object Lab. It needs an expert to do this. Catherine, you've got your hand up. You want to speak to this?
I was just going to say this won't be the only funding application we're going to have regarding this commemoration. I've also had an indication from former member Marty Robinson that he will be putting an application in through, I believe Focus Pi here is the umbrella organisation. for funding for commemoration of this anniversary as well. So I'm wondering if this should be viewed as a whole rather than a single part. That's certainly the board's decision on that one. And also I think they're viewing it in the scope of Tūhono Kerikeri, which of course kind of fell off the rails a bit because of the start of COVID at the end of beginning of last year. So just to keep the board aware that this is happening as well.
Thanks for that, Catherine. I am not sure what part of the commemorations that Marty will be applying for, or Focus Paehi will be applying for, but there are a number of sites around the area. This application is specific to the exhibition, to the museum.
Yes.
We do have the Mary Williams House and Gardens in Paihia, and we also have in the Heritage Precinct where the Colenso Press is further down by the Stone Church is the historic site as well. So there may be activities that they have in mind. I haven't seen the wider program, so I'm not able to comment in detail on that, but this is specifically you have.
So I have asked them to send us an indication so that we can at least have a heads up, because I said all I'm hearing is the rumours, and if you're wanting more, then you need to tell us more.
Yes. So I won't be surprised to see additional funding applications come from this. This is through the one branch or one arm of the wider Williams Trust and support network within the area. I'm just trying to find the right page. So this is, as I said, it's the request is for 50% of the facilitator fees, which will provide a concept plan from the museum curator, and this will be at this stage at seed funding. The venue has been donated by Waitangi National Trust, that upstairs venue that Manawai was alluding to earlier, where there's an exhibition at the moment. So any discussion around this, Frank?
Just one point. We're talking about various applications from various groups. Are they all talking to each other? I mean,
I'm sure they will be.
Coordination of this. That, I guess, is my question.
Through the chair, I have been asking those questions, and there are beginnings of conversations at the moment, because they're still in the planning stages. They're not sure what they're working on together, what they're actually doing yet. It sounds like they're still trying to put it all together, and the conversations are starting.
From my point of view, I would be reluctant to see us committing money, any money, until we're aware that the whole community is working together on this, and it's coming together as one plan from the total community, and it's not end up with an application this month for some that we approve, next month another one which we might not approve, and one the following month that we're not sure about. I just think we've got to be a wee bit careful, and I'm supportive of it, don't get me wrong, but I'd like to be satisfied that the whole thing is coming together as a whole community working together on this project, not isolated little pockets.
Thank you, Frank. In reading the application, this is to start work on the exhibition, the 6-month exhibition that's going to take place, and it does state that it will be part of possibly a wider commemoration of the bicentenary within the community. They have to start somewhere. As Catherine said, they've started talking to each other, but the exhibition is the main feature of the commemoration. And other than that, I do know about other sites, but I'm not sure what's been planned, and perhaps there's not a program in place yet. So we're just voting on what's in front of us today. This is the very start for the seed funding to get this off the ground. It's a 200th anniversary.
Yes, but seed funding for a part of it, or what might be a part
This is
of.
seed funding for the museum curator to start for the exhibition. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, my point being that the exhibition is only part of what will become presumably a bigger activity.
I can't comment because I haven't seen it, but I would imagine it would be.
So essentially, excuse me, hope you don't mind me jumping in there. So essentially, we have many seeds. We've got a range of seeds that will be going to plant the same tree that we might have to fund, or we might. I appreciate what Frank's saying, because we went through this. We've been through this with a number of other groups, and there was a sense we developed funding fatigue, because so many of them came in one after the other, asking for funding around the same event or moment. So I see the value in funding this as a seed kaupapa, and I really appreciate you, Catherine, raising that there might be others that will come for funding under that same celebration. That does actually influence my thinking.
Right, I'm in your hands. We have a recommendation on the table for $4,000 towards this.
Rachel's got a hand up, Madam Chair.
Rachel?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Lane. Going through the tūhono process with Kirikiri, I guess something that I observed was the constant push to bring everything together into one cohesive picture quite often complicated things for the smaller community groups and the smaller community outcomes. And I guess what I'm wondering is whether or not there's an opportunity for the board to look at approaching these celebrationary events like tūhono, like this one, and others that we've got coming up in the future years, the same sort of way that we approach Christmas events, is saying that we would support them under that kaupapa to a certain amount. I don't know what that might look like, but to take on the points that have been raised, especially Manawa, your point around setting of that precedent and whether or not it opens a flow, and it's not necessarily a bad flow because it's a kaupapa that I think we all support, but it's just whether or not the board think that there's opportunity to take a more proactive approach and sort of cap it at the beginning. I don't know, food for thought.
Yeah, really good point, Ewa.
Thanks, Rachel. Well, I'm going to put this to the vote if there's no more discussion around this.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Sorry, just following up from Rachel. How would we cap this? How are quite favorable of this? You know, you say we cap it that the 200th anniversary, whatever it's called, excuse my ignorance, that any events that are included in this anniversary will cap it to, I don't know, a certain amount of money, and it will go over a year that we're probably going to get funding applications for it. So I think it'll be quite a wise move to do, but I'd like to know how we do that.
Yes, it's an interesting
put a resolution in place. I mean, I know for Christmas parades we've got in the strategic plan our cap's $5,000, and I think maybe, because Manuela, you make a really good point that this will cross over an election as well. So by putting a resolution in place, maybe that sends just sets that understanding of what the board's feelings are now for any incoming board members going forward. So I don't know if that might look like a separate resolution, if it's something the board might want to consider. Maybe Casey or Aisha or Catherine has some advice on that.
Yeah, I just before I come to you, Catherine, it is something for a wider discussion, and I'm bearing in mind that we are 2 members light today, and I think we should be wary of the fact that we should have an inclusive discussion around this. There are many anniversaries, there are many events, and they will continue to happen. There is a sense of predetermination around that if we put it out that we are going to cap money to events. So I wouldn't be terribly in favour, just thinking off the top of my head on that one. But certainly a great one to workshop, Rachel. I think we should all sit down and have a bit of a think and a talk around it. And you know, what is important is 20th, 50th, 100th, 150th, you know, what are important, and will it be a given that every anniversary of every single little thing that happens, they come to the board? Catherine, I'd be interested to hear your comments.
What I was going to say is I think this is something that should be taken in the context of your strategic plan and maybe put there and discussed in the context of that, rather than straight out here in the board meeting while we're considering a single application.
Yeah.
It is in your strategic plan where you have got your Christmas guidance in place. It would make sense that you could then have a wider discussion about perhaps anniversary or commemoration events and how they would be funded in the future.
Thank you. Frank?
Yeah, I have a wee bit of a concern with that. Christmas parades are fairly consistent. You know what a Christmas parade is, you know what one looks like. Something like this, there'll be various shapes, sizes. There won't be a kind of norm. And I'd be a wee bit worried if we capped amounts for celebrations when in fact that cap might totally apply to one, but be totally inappropriate for another. And I just think the variation is too much to be able to commit now to what we might give to another event at some time in the future. And the other thing is, I think we've got to be very careful about committing future boards. I think this board can make its decisions, but you need to be very careful before you actually make a commitment that in a sense is committing a future board. My thoughts.
Thank you, Frank. Manuela?
Yes, Frank, but I was thinking more that we do a specific cap for that event, because it is a big event. We know there's more coming. It's 200 years, it's in our region, and it's not far off. So we do know there is more, there'll be more stuff coming. So I was talking specific for that event, not for any birthday party or Belinda's anniversaries or something like that.
Yeah, no, I take the point, but my problem is that different events commemorating, or different functions commemorating the same event will take, they will be different, and how you could make a commitment to pay the same amount to them all when you actually don't know what all the different ones are. I just struggle saying, well, we're going to commit this amount to each event in the celebration, where some we might think warrant twice as much and some warrant none at all.
Thank you. Good discussion to take offline actually, and think a bit more about. And I have taken on board, Catherine, thank you, that we perhaps look at this as in our strategic plan, which is a living document and can be amended, you know, annually or when we see fit, or if a new board sees fit to change that. So, Lane, you've got your hand up.
I do. Madam Chairman, I listened, and Frank, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think you're quite correct. I think we should, and Catherine, I appreciate the comments, but I think before an application, when we've got this one in, but we maybe need some sort of process that if an application is going to be part of something ongoing, we should have some indication of that before we consider the first, because when you do the first one, you're kind of committed to the process and the activity. And so the next week it comes in, this could be a $100,000 project. I have no way of knowing. But I just, maybe for future, we need some sort of policy or structure around what's an event that has an open-ended budget to it.
Thanks for that, Frank. Well, at the moment, we just have the main exhibition, and it states possibly a wider commemoration of the bicentenary within the community. So it implies there will be offshoots and other events. In the meantime, I'm going to put this. It's moved by Manuela, seconded by Frank. I'm going to put this to the vote for 50%, which is $4,000 towards the 200th anniversary for seed funding. I vote yes. Lane?
Yes.
Manuela?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Manuai?
Yes.
And Rachel abstaining. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the next one, which is our Kirikiri Community Charitable Trust, that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board approves a sum of $5,000 plus GST if applicable, be paid from the board's community fund account to our Kirikiri Community Charitable Trust for costs towards purchasing a permanent Christmas tree for Kirikiri to the following community outcomes: communities that are healthy, safe, connected and sustainable, and proud, vibrant communities. Do I have a mover?
If I move it, I can't do an amendment. Is that correct, Madam Chair? Could you answer that question?
You want to this is to move it to get it on the table?
You can amend.
Yes.
You can move and amend.
Can I? Are you sure?
Yes.
According to our standing orders, you can. But if you're on Kaiko here, no, you can't. The Kaiko here Community Board, Hokianga Community Board has different standing orders.
No.
So you can't. But for us, we can.
I'd like to obviously get it on the table, but.
Frank, what would you like to move it to put it on the table?
Yeah, I'm happy to move.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah. Manuela, whoever.
Thank you, Manuela. Right. Now we're open for discussion. They requested $20,000, which was 39% of their funding application, and the recommendation is for 10%, which is $5,000. Just a point of clarification before we get into the discussion on this, Catherine. You've recommended that the funding, we could treat it like funding that would usually be given toward the Christmas parade and roading for Kirikiri. Can you elaborate on why you said that, please?
Because this is in the conversations with them, they said this would be what they would be applying for. So usually in your strategic plan, you said you'll give up to $2,500 for a Christmas event and up to an additional $2,500 for any roading management that's required. So that being the case, I have suggested that because this is a one-off thing that they are looking to purchase, that we could perhaps, or the board could perhaps approve granting them $5,000, which would be what you would usually give for the Christmas parade application if it came in.
Thanks for clarifying that, Catherine. Right, I've got some hands up. I'm not sure if they're old hands, Manuela.
That's an old hand. I'll wash it.
Thank you, Lane.
Yeah, no, not an old hand. I certainly take Catherine's percent. I think there's something, and I've raised this before with the board. We have a somewhat unique situation this year with Kirikiri, that it had been this group's intention that they were going to not do a Christmas parade per se, but do a fixed parade in the domain. Of course, the domain cannot be available this year, so that's they're producing some other event, which is a parade and carol singing and various other items. And they have applied for funds through the council, I believe, in one, but they have not applied for the standard $5,000 through us. And this Christmas tree, while the name gets confusing, is not to do with this Christmas. It is a long-term situation which has nothing to do with the Christmas parade this year. So while I appreciate Catherine's comments, I think it's got to be looked at as they are requesting 20, which is about half of what they need. They've already raised the other half. And it shouldn't be,
39%.
yeah, it shouldn't be it shouldn't be folded in with the normal Christmas parade that they're doing this year. This is a separate item, although it's going to provide benefit to the community for about 10 years, as was said in the presentation, and will eliminate certain ongoing costs for the next 10 years. If I was going to really be cute and make the case, this tree will allow it to go to the domain, which will mean that we won't have to pay $2,000 for traffic control for the next 10 years. Ergo, please give me the $20,000 now. So, you know, and that's being a bit cute, Madam Chairman, I apologise, but I just don't want to see the two activities confused, if you don't mind. And
Thank you, Lane.
would,
and I think you've just pointed out to us that the $5,000 a year, which is under this board, is a given.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind that could change in the strategic plan moving forward or with other boards. I mean, that's $50,000 as a given over the next 10 years for Christmas and Kirikiri. So, Manawa, your hand I had up next. Thank you, Lane.
Yep. I'll just put my hand down now. Just to clarify, my comment about Kaikohe was that the standing orders for the Kaikohe Hokianga board is that you can't, the person who moves the original motion cannot move an amendment, but the standing orders for the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board is that we can both move the original motion and the amendment. So that's why I made that comment before. Lane, and just to say, Lane, that's the third time I've made that comment to you in particular, so please can you read your standing orders? Thank you. Anyway.
Sorry, who was that to?
So Lane.
Lane.
So,
and Lane, sorry, Manawa, and moving on from it, just because you move or second something doesn't mean to say you're going to vote for or against it.
Understand substantive.
The floor is yours, Manawa.
Yeah, I like this. I like this group. I like the energy. I like the idea. I like the sustainability factor, the value for money, and the community contribution. I appreciated all the very generative and inclusive words she used around making it accessible to the community. And I think this is a very accessible opportunity. And I like that the $5,000 has been recommended. $20,000 in the application almost gave me a heart attack, because I know how much need is in our communities and how many groups can benefit from $20,000. But the $5,000, I think, is a great place of strength for us to support this application. Kia ora.
Thanks, Manawai. Frank.
Yeah, I'm obviously very supportive of this. I personally would like to see us increase it to 10,000, and in our resolution grant them 10,000 in lieu of the normal 5,000 that would be available for the next 2 Christmases. In other words, we have a policy you can get up to 5,000 a Christmas per Christmas. We'll give you $10,000 now, but you won't get money for a Christmas parade this Christmas or next Christmas.
Can I just respond to that just quickly, which
Yes.
I think is a great idea? But wouldn't we then be promising another board's money for that next Christmas, because we'll have an election next year?
Yes, we would.
Yes, that's true. But if you think about it, any money for Christmas parades will be allocated before the date of the next election, will probably be late October next year. And I would suspect by then we'll have done our Christmas allocations.
Madam Chairman, could I respond to Frank, my good colleague there?
Yes.
Frank, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm just very adamant that I'm not linking this Christmas tree to the current Christmas parade. I guess you could make a case that you could apply the $2,500 for traffic control, but I just really think this should be a standalone thing. I certainly applaud your possible amendment to 10,000, and I would support that wholeheartedly, but I don't think it should have caveats on it, quite frankly.
My reason for that, Lane, is Manawai raises very valid concerns about other ways in which $10,000 could be spent in our area. And I was merely trying to give some rationale behind why we're committing 10,000 to this, as opposed to other more worthwhile things, in the sense that the $10,000 would be consistent with our current policies regarding Christmas events. That was all. I mean, I'm not going to die in a ditch over it. I was just trying to put some rationale behind the decision.
Thank you, Frank. Any more comments? No? Okay. Are you foreshadowing an amendment there, Frank? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm happy to move an amendment to that effect.
I'll second the amendment.
What's the amendment, Madam Chairman?
So sorry, the
Was for
Madam Chair,
$10,000.
Yes.
Okay, 10,000. Thank you.
Manawa, you seconded that?
Yes, based on Frank's rationale, I second it.
Now, to be fair, if you're going to put that amendment through, I did say in lieu of the normal up to $5,000 that would be paid towards a Christmas parade. I'm not going to insist that that be there, but the amendment I was making was in that context. I'll still amend it to 10,000, but it's a question of whether you want to have the rider that it's in lieu of the normal 5,000 that might be paid for a Christmas party, a Christmas parade.
Thank you, Frank. I'm not so sure that the rider is required in the sense that the parade will no longer be part of the Christmas festivities as I understand it. But Rachel, you might want to add to that.
Madam Chair, Lane has been direct contact with our kirikiri on this as one of the kirikiri, so I'll leave any comments to that to him. I did just want to jump in and at the risk, I know I've brought up some big picture conversations and I do often overthink things, but just encouraging the board to perhaps foreshadow thinking around the strategic plan with the increase in community grants fund this year with the long-term plan and also with placemaking. And I guess my challenge is what, when it comes to Christmas, could potentially step into a placemaking project as well. So this, for example, when you take on board the sustainability, the fact that it will create an environmental space that celebrates Christmas for perhaps the period of a month of a year, when does it start stepping into that placemaking realm? That's just my challenge to the board, perhaps. I'm personally very supportive of this project. I'm supportive of anything that celebrates Christmas equitably across our communities, especially when we can move away from plastic wrapped lollies and increase in carbon footprint, which I think is what they're doing here. So from an outcome point of view, I absolutely support it. But yeah, knowing that our placemaking fund has popped up to $100,000, so the community grants fund has increased as well. What does that mean in terms of the approach that we take to Christmas and to placemaking projects? That's just my 2 cents worth in regards to this amendment of Frank's, which I fully support. I am a little bit dubious on the into further term situation though. Sometimes I think as a board we have an opportunity to just jump in and support things, and I know that that's a contradiction to what I just raised with the pie here thing. So that's an indication of my brain perhaps, but those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Rachel. And
just to respond to that, sorry.
Manawa, you want to respond?
I just wanted to say that, yeah, I did originally think this could have placemaking appeal, but it's just there temporarily is what I thought about it. That if it was there all year round or half the year, then maybe I would think it was more of a placemaking. Kaupapa, thank you for raising that though.
Thanks, Lane.
Yeah, I mean, Frank's been very generous with it's not the caveat. I just want to reiterate again, at the risk of being monotonous, that this is not, what we're being asked for here is not for this Christmas. This is forward of that. So I don't want to see them penalised for this Christmas for anything because they're trying to do something on a wing and a prayer. Lions evaporated. They've taken hold of it. There's a group of ladies in this thing that are an awesome force. And they're all, they're struggling on doing something. They have totally bought into the fact that they're doing a Christmas activity for the broader community. I was in a discussion with Bruce. Kaio's going to struggle for a Christmas parade. So we are going to incorporate those people into this Kiri Kiri thing. There we are, and I totally do it. I support Frank's motion of 10,000.
Thanks, Lane. Frank?
Yeah, just another point. We need to actually think outside the square. This tree, you can put up signage in lighting on it around the tree of whatever signs you want to put up. I could see this Christmas tree in the park, in the domain at Matariki, as part of that acknowledgement. It doesn't need to be used just at Christmas time. There will be other events during the year, and Matariki, I think, is a really good example where that could be part of our commemoration. And the signage on the tree acknowledges something quite different than Christmas, but it becomes a feature of the domain.
Thanks, Frank. Yes, it has unlimited capacity if we dare to dream, I think, with midwinter Christmases. And some of you will remember when they brought snow to Kiri Kiri, remember, in the middle of, anyway, I'm digressing. Any other comments before we vote on this amendment?
Belinda, I have my hand, but just a comment.
I don't know why I can't see your hand, David, but jump in. Thank you. Yeah. I can now.
Yeah, it would be, I think at least 10,000 would be appropriate for this. Just remind ourselves, this asset, which is what they're talking about, has got a 10-year life. That's $1,000 per year. To take $5,000 away in each of 2 years and give them $1,000 instead would seem sort of excessively parsimonious to me. And taking Rachel's point, remember at the end of the last financial year, the board did have funds uncommitted and then had a bit of a scramble to find worthy causes to commit it to. Rachel's point, there is more money in the pot this year, which is a good thing. So let's not be too sort of tight-fisted. I would think $10,000 would be sort of a minimum contribution, and I wouldn't tag it to any removal of any other funding. That would seem, a bit unreasonable. As I say, you'd be giving them 1,000 and taking away 5,000.
Great, thanks, David. Right, does everyone had a say? Manuela, any comments? No.
No, thank you.
Right, I'm going to put this amendment to the vote. Moved by Frank, seconded by Manawai, that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board approves the sum of $10,000 plus GST, if applicable, be paid from the board's community fund account to our Kiri Kiri Community Charitable Trust for costs towards purchasing a permanent Christmas tree for Kiri Kiri to support community outcomes in lieu of the annual 5,000. I think we're removing that, aren't we?
Yes. Thank you.
Support community outcomes, full stop. I'm a yes. Lane?
I'm a yes.
Manuela?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Maniwai?
Aye.
Rachel's abstaining. She'd like to be a yes, I think. So that's a unanimous yes for the amendment. So that now becomes the substantive motion.
Madam Chair, can we just get a mover and a seconder for the substantive, please?
I move it, Manuela.
Manuela.
I'm happy to second again.
And Manawai, thank you.
Yep.
And a vote, thank you.
Yes. Lane.
Yes.
Manuela.
Yep.
Frank.
Yep.
Manuai, and Rachel abstain. Manuai, I know she's there somewhere.
Yeah, aye.
Thank you. Carried. Right, moving on. Next recommendation is that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board approves the sum of $5,000 plus GST if applicable, be paid from the Community Board's Community Fund account to Te Puna Araha for cost towards the Moriwa Christmas 21 to the following community outcomes: communities that are healthy, safe, connected and sustainable, proud, vibrant communities. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Lane. Manu, I did write down here that we had a presentation at one of the board meetings a few months ago from NTA or NZTA who said they would be happy to assist with toward the traffic management on the state highway areas. Are they included in this? Oh, Catherine's going to beat me with an answer to this. should they come forward?
I've had so many emails flying backwards and forwards that I've been copied in on. Yes, the NTA is working on this one because it is a big deal because they want to shut down the state highway. So Kelvin Thomas, I believe, has been involved in this because basically there's nowhere else that the parade can go, so it needs to go along the state highway. So NZTA, NTA are very much involved in this conversation.
So from an assistance perspective, we put $2,500 towards traffic management. They indicated, I'm not sure if you recall, Manuai, at one of our meetings, they indicated that they were happy to help out on the state highway corridors. So I'm just recalling
there
that
will
from the
still be
perspective of
fees.
traffic management.
Yeah, there
So
will still be fees involved for the traffic management. They can't all be taken away, unfortunately. They've got to do things like advertising that the road will be closed.
Sure, okay. So it's up to, so any surplus funds would come back to the board anyway.
Yes.
Okay, do we have any discussion around this? Nope. I'm going to put it to the vote. They requested 5,100 and we are giving them 5,000, which is 39%. I will move yes.
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Manuela?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Manuai?
Aye.
Thank you. And Rachel's abstaining. Carried. Next application we are all very familiar with. This recommendation is that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board confirms the resolution of the 3rd of June 2021 and approves the sum of $3,000 plus GST if applicable be paid from the board's community fund account to Bay of Islands Walkways and Walking Trust for cost towards Russell to Okiato pathway signage to support the following community outcomes: communities that are healthy, safe, connected and sustainable, and proud, vibrant communities. Do I have a mover?
Yes,
I'll move it,
Manuela.
Madam Chair.
Manuela. Seconder, Lane.
Yep.
Any discussion around this? You're all familiar with this. This has been presented to us. No, we'll put it to the vote. $3,000, thank you. I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
Manuel. Frank.
Yes.
Manuai.
Yes.
And Rachel abstaining. Carried. Thank you. And this morning we had Aljon come and speak to us about the next recommendation, Aljon Fitzgerald from CAIO, that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board confirms their resolution of June 3rd, 2021 and approves the sum of $30,000 plus GST if applicable be paid from the board's community fund account to Whangaroa Community Trust for cost towards CAIO playground shade structure to support the following community outcomes: communities that are healthy, safe, connected and sustainable, and proud, vibrant communities. Any discussion before I put this? No? Okay. I shall move.
Sorry,
Do I have
Madam
a
Chair, I just
seconder?
wanted to
I think
ask a
Rachel,
couple of questions.
So
Yes.
if we, sorry, Councillor Smith and Madam
Can I
Chair,
have a
if you
second?
don't,
Just
yeah, thank you.
I'll second.
thanks, Manawai. Yes, Rachel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, there was a comment made around council choosing not to fund the shade sale, and just wanted to check, I don't have the strategic plan in front of me, sorry, but was that something that the board had advocated for? Because if so, I'm quite disappointed to hear that. It's great that we have funded other shade sales in the district, but I'm just a little bit disappointed to hear that this one missed out. I think it's a great kaupapa. And perhaps to be opportunist, I'd just like to plant the seed of the conversation that the board might like to have going forward around relocating shade sales and playgrounds from the Kirikiri domain in coming months too. But this is a great project to be supporting, and I'm just trying to navigate what the breakdown in council process might have been for this project to miss out on LTP funding, if anybody's got any comments on that. Thank you.
Yeah, Rachel, that came from me. I presented on behalf of the board from our strategic plan and requested shade cells on all our playgrounds under council's health and safety requirement issues, and that one was not successful and through the LTP process. However, I think the Mariwa one wasn't it, Manawai, from memory? Yeah, so so just getting that across, you know, the responsibility that we have these assets and we keep building them, but we don't actually have the budgets to stick the shade cells over. And if we can't get that through the LTP, it's hard to get it in the annual plan process. So perhaps it should be something that's considered at the time of the construction or relocation of the playgrounds. Lane.
Yes, just for Councillor Smith, I think with regards to Kaio, a lot of it was done directly by the community, which maybe missed some of the budgeting ideas. And with regards to the playground at the domain, we're already in discussions with relocating that playground and the shade sales, which I'll be bringing to our next meeting.
Thanks, Lane.
Okay.
Rachel, you still got your hand up? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wanting to check if Helen was still on the call, being our rep from IAMS, and whether she had any comments around, I don't know if there's a policy in place for requiring shade sales on playgrounds, but how can we make sure that these are all captured going forward, so it's not a matter of the community board rep having to go out and audit our playgrounds to make sure that shade sales are on there? Just taking advantage of the fact that Helen's on here and asking if she has any comments.
Through the chair, I'll always have comments on things, Rachel, if I'm allowed to speak. So, so I stay on mute permanently for that reason. In these sorts of situations, Belinda's comment's right. It needs to be included at the time that we design the playground. Some of our playgrounds have natural shade, so it's not an automatic conclusion. So it needs to be considered when we actually put that plan together as to what the site is, and we've actually raised that in some discussions that we've had with district facilities, and in the condition assessment work that's happening at the moment for that, shade sales have definitely been raised for several of our playgrounds. So that is something that is becoming more prevalent, I guess, from a health and safety perspective as well. But going forward, we definitely do need to include that in the planning stage for each playground.
Yeah, thanks for that, Helen. It has been an issue, ironically, in my own backyard with the Paihia waterfront playground on Marsden Road. It's on the beach. It's extremely exposed to extreme weather events, and it also is quite a large playground, basically a district-wide asset. People come from all over to the beach to use it. The issue we have there we've had a couple of attempts through several boards to try and do something there, as has Focus Paihia. The issue we have there is that due to the height required to actually cover the playground, it would require resource consent, and we don't have absolute uninterrupted waterfront. We do have an establishment behind. So these are the sort of things that perhaps, you know, in the future we can mitigate against happening, that we do have those issues addressed at the beginning. But and I think it is in council policy, Helen, isn't it already under the health and safety to actually provide shade and shelter?
It is not necessarily policy, but it is something that should be considered each time. But you're right about that, because we get into this situation where, depending on the location of the playground, you may well have people having concerns about views being blocked, or having, severe weather events actually making that a hazard rather than an advantage. So there are things that we need to think about each time, which is why we've been saying that we need to put it into the planning of these playgrounds to make sure. But we are taking the advice from the condition assessment information that we have. So for our existing playgrounds, we are considering all of that at the moment as well.
Thanks for that. Any other questions on this 30,000? No, okay. We'll put this to the vote. This is actually four, I don't know if you've read in the full report additional information, there's actually 4 shade cells in this structure. So it's 4 different. It's quite an impressive one. Bruce will be happy. Right, I say yes.
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Manuela.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Manuwai.
Yes.
And Rachel abstain. Carried. Now, whilst we're on playgrounds, the next recommendation is that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board approves the, sorry, I got my playgrounds mixed up there, that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board approves the unspent sum of $5,189 plus GST if applicable be retained by the Kirikiri Sports Complex Management Group for costs towards construction of a playground at the complex to support the following community outcomes: communities that are healthy, safe, connected and sustainable, and proud, vibrant communities. Do I have a mover?
Yo. Yes.
Thank you, Lane. A seconder?
Yes, please, Manuela.
Thank you. Discussion around this. This is due to pro bono work. So the costs went way under what they expected to, due to the fact that people in the community behind them have got stuck in and done a lot of work. So hence they're asking for this to go towards the construction of the playground. Manawai.
Kia ora. I couldn't, maybe it's just the way my iPad's reading the document, but I couldn't find the application form for this 5,000. I could only just see the email.
So you're correct. Catherine can speak to that because do you want to speak to that, Catherine?
Through the chair, yes. They were granted $10,000 for the feasibility study in, I want to say, September of 2019, and came back and did the report, provided the report and everything to the board, whichever month it was this year. I can actually tell you offhand, was in June of this year. And that's when she said, we've actually still got $5,189. So she has sent in an email saying, we still have this money that was unspent. Do you want us to return it, or can we retain it? So it's not a new application. It's whether the board will allow them to retain the full amount that they were granted, just repurpose the balance.
Thank you. Thank you for, then I don't have to keep looking for it now that I know it's not there. I asked because I wanted to check, have we granted money towards the playground as well?
No.
Yes.
No.
We did, didn't we? We did. That was just recently, and that's how we got the project report around the feasibility study.
Yes.
So that's why I wanted to know where the application form was so I could see those details. So how much did we grant for the playground? Was it 5 or 10,000?
I know they asked for 15. One moment, I will find their minutes. Now, it was the June meeting. My apologies, I don't know it just offhand, so that's why I have to go and look. Hapori, Kirikiri Football, Kiri Gymnastics, Open Art. $15,000.
Did we grant the 15?
We granted the 15.
15. Okay, so then effectively we would be giving $20,000 towards this playground. Yes, that changes things for me. Thank you.
So, Catherine, this is the leftover, though, from the feasibility study monies that we granted
Yes, it is.
originally, right? Yeah.
Yes, it is. And they've looked at the overall cost, I believe, is in the order of somewhere around $200,000. So, and they're seeking funding from elsewhere for the rest.
Rachel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the pleasure of sitting alongside the Kirikiri Sports Complex Committee delegated from Council, so I do have a little bit more of an awareness of this. So the $10,000 that we granted, the balance of that is left because the company that did the feasibility study for them chose to make a donation toward that. And so they were left in a tricky position where the cost was initially going to be that, which is what we granted for. That company then chose to donate that money back to the project. So when I was talking with Ange, I'm going to put my hand up and say that I suggested to be cheeky to come to the board and say, we've got this money left over because it was donated back to us from a local business. Would you support us putting it toward the project? Catherine, you're right, they're aiming in that $200,000 to $300,000 mark, and I think they've raised about $75,000 of that so far, with a big application going into, I think it's into lotteries perhaps any day now. So it is a big project, but I just wanted to put it on the table and say that's where the money came from, and that's how it got back to the table as well. So they put the money back into our pot, or we choose, as you say, Manawai, to add it to the money that's already been granted to go toward the playground. That's me. Thank you.
I think that's awesome.
Thanks,
that they came up with the in-kind koha that allowed them to be able to have this money left over. That is pretty amazing. I'm thinking if we're essentially not putting in an application, this money comes under the old application. Would that be right, Catherine?
The original.
Yes, it would.
And I abstained from that vote, so I imagine I would need to abstain again.
Maybe you could look at standing orders.
That's entirely up to you. I would say no, you don't have to. This has come back as a it's not a new application. It's whether you feel you are comfortable with them retaining that money. It's up to you if you want to abstain from it. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put this to the vote. Any further discussion around it?
Just that I will abstain for consistency.
Yep, fine. That's fine. Okay, so I'm a yes. Lane?
Yes.
Manuela?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Manawai abstaining and Rachel abstaining. That's carried. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just so the board is aware, the press conference hasn't started yet either. I will let you know when it does.
I think we're just about done. Thanks, Catherine, but I'm watching the chat just in case you have some news for us. So item 7.7, page 125.
I'll move the report.
I will move that the Bay of Islands-Whangaroa Community Board note the project reports received from the Kaio Festival Group, Ngā Pura Pura Kaio Kirikiri Theatre Company, this is for the Sound of Music, and Simpson Park Hall and Management Committee for the roof replacement. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Thank you, Lane. Any discussion around these reports? I'll put it to the vote. Yes.
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 Frank?
Yes.
Manawai?
Aye.
And Rachel abstaining. Carried. Thank you. So we have come to the close of the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Madam Chair, would you like me to do karakia? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I was just going to ask if there was any further business. I know we're really keen. Any further business or resolutions that we needed to move at this stage? No. I'll be notifying you all of a workshop for road naming as soon as I get some range of dates of staff so that I can put a range of dates to you. So hopefully we'll be getting a few workshops through. Thank you, Kelly, for attending as well. The input for the bylaw schedule.
So,
Madam Kelly.
Yeah, if you're happy, so good to see you, Councillor Stratford. Man, I miss all your guys' faces. Hey, Belinda, if you're happy, Madam Chair, for us to set up, like myself, Democracy Services, to set up a workshop, like a Teams meeting for all of you, for the community board to have some more input into that bylaw schedule that Rachel Smith has just dropped into the chat, we can organize that for you.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, I have a couple of staff have been liaising with me, but I'm waiting for them to get back to me with dates. So, yeah, as soon as we hear something, they're driving the time frame. So we need to kind of go in order of preference or urgency with staff as to where they're at. But that would be great. Thank you. So you've got some news before we close, Manuela? Are we in level 3?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
From
Excellent.
tonight,
Great
midnight.
news.
Yep.
Okay. Not a great takeaway person, but I guess that's great news to finish our meeting on. Thank you, Helen, for joining us as well and for your input. And Catherine, as usual, and anybody else who's out there. I can't quite see everybody, I don't think. David, thank you. I don't know why your hand hasn't been coming up sometimes on my screen, but thank you for being with us. And Manu, I'll ask you to close with a karakia, please.
Awesome.
And Aisha.
Ai o ki te aorangi, ai o ki te whenua, ai o ki te ao katoa, ai o ki ahau. Peace to the universe, peace to the land, peace to all things, and peace to me. Kia ora whānau.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank